Hello, all my wonderful students. I know, that was pretty funny. All right, where did we leave off yesterday?
Always consult the manufacturer.
Always consult the manufacturers.
This was on break-in.
Break-in, thank you. Did I do after break-in?
No.
No, okay, so we left off with right up to break-in. That was what line item was that?
We did A, B, and then...
A, B, now we are in C. So we talked about break-in. So we're talking about, for those of you just joining us at home, all right, we're talking about selection of oils, and we did during break-in. And Lycoming and Continental both recommend what?
For break-ins, mineral oil.
Straight mineral oil. Unless what?
It's a turbo.
Lycoming's turbocharged, or it's pretty much Lycoming's issues.
79 series.
The 7.6 series engines, like the 0320H2AD. All right, so we did that. So we're going to run it about 25 hours on the straight mineral oil. And then we get to after break-in. So, a new device is detected. What do you know? Okay, C. So after break-in. Could you get control of that back there, please? Okay, I see. Let's see the first consideration. All right, so engine's been broken in. Now they come back to you and they say, "Hey, super mechanic, I've finished my break-in. Now, what oil do I need?" And you are going to have to figure this out. So first consideration is type of engine. And I don't mean turbine versus piston, because that would be a little too obvious. So opposed engines. Use thinner oils. Then radial engines. So if it's a radial, you know you're going to go with something much thicker. And if it's an opposed engine, you know you're going to go with something a little bit thinner than that. Second consideration, what do you think that's going to be?
Climate.
Very good. Climate. Is temperature. And I could reference service instruction 1014. Well, Mike is the one I have. Or as they say in the videos, always reference the latest service instruction. All right, so selection of oils. And I'll make a little chart for you. So all temp. And oops, we'll do temps. We'll do straight mineral. And we'll do ashless dispersant type oil, or not mineral oil. So we'll move this down here, all temps. So if you're not worried about the temperature, what kind of straight mineral? Non-applicable. So for any temp, we can do 15W50, which is what kind of oil?
Multi-viscosity.
It's a multi-viscosity, very good, and because it's got the two numbers. And is that semi-synthetic or mineral-based? That is semi-synthetic. Who makes that one? Aeroshell. Or 20W50. And who makes that? Phillips. And what kind of oil is that?
Semi-synthetic. Oh wait, no, it's a pure mineral.
Straight, it's a mineral base. So it's not semi-synthetic. All right, above 80 degrees, do it in Fahrenheit. Straight mineral, recommend 120 or W120, which seems pretty heavyweight here to me. What is W120?
Ashless disbursement.
There you go, ashless dispersant oil. Why is it ashless dispersant?
Because it has a W.
Because it has a W on there. And above 60. And I believe this is all out of Service Instruction 1014 Mike. 100 W80 or W100. 30 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. 80 or W80. So now we're getting a little more precise. 0 to 70. Want to take a guess what that's going to be? 65, yep. So W65, W80, 20W40, which I don't know who makes that one. I've also got 0 to 90. I've got 20W50, who I don't know who makes that in a straight mineral. 20W50, who makes that one over here? Yep, 15W50. And below, here you go, Hannah. 10 degrees Fahrenheit. That doesn't really happen, does it?
Is that 20W50 the same one?
Same thing, yeah. So you can kind of see by looking at that, you can pick where you are. So hey, we're down here, it's summertime, middle of summer, we expect temperatures to get up to 105, 110, right? So what could you select? Well, all temps, because that would definitely be an all temps thing, right? All temps, we could go 15W50, 20W50, right? All temps. We could go, well, it's above 80, W120. That seems excessive to me. I've never put W120 in a opposed engine. But, hey, if the service instruction allows you. Above 60, which it is, that would be normal for around here. It would be a W100 straight weight. Or we can go back down here to 0 to 90 degrees, 20W50, 15W50. Winter time around here, it was most common to use a W80 or the multigrade.
So in the 100 AW, that's only Lycoming specific.
In what? Is this Lycoming specific?
No, yesterday you showed a picture of the 100 AW.
100
Lycoming specific.
100 AW.
That was the.
Oh, 100 AD oil. W100. Okay.
Yeah, uh-huh.
W100. No, that's for all engines. All engine will take W100.
I think it was 100 AW, and it has the additives.
Oh, the plus.
To the.
The plus.
Right.
The W. Okay. W100 plus. Come over here. This stuff, right?
Yeah, but look, the Victory says 100 AW.
Oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay, there, I got it. Yes, and your question about that is?
That kind of fits in right there
It
where
fits.
the 100 was, and it's just.
It's got the plus stuff. Yeah, exactly. All right, so back to here. So just to give you an idea, so consult service instructions, pilot operating handbook out of the aircraft, owner preferences. What number am I on then? I think it's like 6. 7, okay. I should also say with selection of oils, we can also add in the history of the engine. If it's a high time motor, it's starting to wear a little bit more, maybe burning a lot more oil, and the customers say, I'd rather use a little bit, go on the heavier side of things. So, all right, oil change intervals.
And you would want heavier because
The clearances are getting bigger inside of the engine, and so you want that thicker oil to fill up those cavities.
Bigger ball bearings, right?
Bigger ball bearings, it's exactly it. All right, oil change intervals. So how often are we going to change oil? Well, if you're a mechanic, not often enough. Everybody should change oil all the time. So. Engines with a screen. Have the oil changed every 25 hours. And there's also a note that says not to exceed 4 months. So you have your oil changed and you fly it 5 hours a month. So how many months are you going to get out of that?
4 months.
What's that?
4 months.
4 months. That's it. Fly it 1 hour a month. How many months you get out of it? 4 months. Why? Why would, if I only flew it 1 hour a month, why would I go then 4 hours and start changing my oil?
Rust.
Exactly. The oil is going to actually absorb moisture, and that corrosive acids that have been in there from the 1 hour you used it are going to cause problems. So you want to drain it out and get fresh oil in there. This is kind of like the overhaul is good for 2,000 hours, or what's the calendar time?
12 years.
It's always 12 years. I just threw out the 2,000 hours. That's not a given, but it's always, manufacturers always say, or 12 years. So, and most people don't follow that rule. And same with the 4 month thing. I would tell you that I'm one of those too, but now that I have this big mic right here, I always change every 4 months.
It's going to be very loud.
It's going to be obnoxiously loud. What is he doing? So unprofessional. All right, engines. We'll just edit that part out. With a
I got the raw and uncut right here.
with a full flow oil filter. So a full flow, also called a spin-on. It's the same thing that you use on your car. It's changed. Engines with a full flow oil filter. Oil is changed every 50 hours or 4 months.
Whichever comes first, right?
Whichever comes first.
Now, if your engine comes with the screen type, can you convert to the spin-on?
Absolutely. And I'll talk about that. What's a TIO?
Time between overhaul?
No,
Time.
that's TDO. Very good. That was close. So,
Oil? Change?
I'm hearing it. Turbocharged, injected, opposed. Some TIO engines require 25-hour oil changes, even with the full flow oil filter on it. Oh yeah, with this. Don't forget to check the suction. Don't forget to check the suction screen. All right, so what's happening is you have your oil pump working, and the oil pump is then, let me see, I think I have a picture here. I don't want that at all. I want that. And let's see if we can go to a picture of an engine here. That kind of makes sense. You okay over there?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so what do we have here? This looks like a Continental. And we have your oil pump over here. And the oil pump is going to suck from the oil sump up into these invisible tubes that they have through the oil pump. And in this case, it goes out of the oil pump, through the oil filter, out of the oil filter, through the oil cooler, and then off to the engine. So there's a suction screen on some engines that you can check. Not all of them. Continental, like your 520s, 550s, 470s. It's really like a car. You have to pull the whole oil sump off to get to it. But Lycoming, they actually have a suction screen that you can check. So you just pull the big plug on the bottom of the oil sump. It comes out, big holes in it, designed to catch big parts. So you should check the suction screen. But then, of course, you always want to check the pressure screen as it comes out right here. So we're going to check that. Yeah, I'll go into oil filters a little bit later. So that's what we got going on there. All right. 7, 8. Types of oil delivery. In thinking about your engines that you're working on out in the shop, what are some different methods that oil is being delivered around about the engine?
Galleries.
Okay, so gallery is correct. It's the tube that is going to, it's like the manifold. It's like an oil manifold is another name for a gallery. So we've got that fills it full of oil, but what is really, how is it the oil actually lubricating the engine and what?
Spraying.
Okay, spray, there we go. So where are we going to have spray? It's actually D, but we'll do it from top to bottom. All right, what in the engine is being sprayed? Where do we have spray?
The back of the pistons.
The walls.
Back of the pistons.
Back of the
Cylinder
cylinders, I mean.
Back of the cylinders. Explain.
Back of the piston from the crankshaft.
Yeah.
Are there things in the back of the pistons that spray out?
The journals sting oil to the backs of the.
Okay, so that's, how about splash? We can call that splash. Okay, so close. Is there anything that actually sprays? That really just has a whole...
Oil spray nozzles, sometimes they're built in, right?
Okay, so Lycoming uses oil piston cooling nozzles in the back of the engine that actually are drilled into a gallery that actually, they're sprayers, and they're aimed right at the back of the piston, and it sprays the back of the piston. So we've got that. Continental drills holes in their rods and the cap end, and that's why it's important where the numbers go, because the oil passages are drilled a certain way to aim off at the next cylinder. So it'll spray out that way. So there's a couple of spray things there. I don't want my ransomware. All right, what else? We got spray.
Sling.
Pressure.
Okay, pressure. What's under pressure that's being oil fed under pressure? Crankshaft. Bearings, crankshaft bearings, absolutely. That's the first place where the oil goes. Out of the oil pump, down the gallery, pressured right into the crankshaft main bearings. Then what?
The connecting rods.
Yep, then it goes through a tube to the connecting rods, so you have pressure there. How about the idler gear on your Lycoming in the back? There's an idler shaft and a gear that goes over it. That gear between the crank and the cam. How does that get lubricated on its shaft?
Pressure.
It is, it's pressure. There's some little holes, you find that, it comes right in there and pressure feeds that. What else do we have here? Spray, pressure, I heard this one. Splash, which really is kind of coming off the back of the, coming out of the connecting rods, the throws, it's splashing it all over the place. And I got one more.
Gravity?
Okay, I can go gravity. Let's be more specific.
Centrifuge.
What's that?
I said it drips.
Drips. That's the word I was looking for. Drip.
You got it. Oh, that was all.
Drip is it. So where do we have drip oil?
To the rocker arms.
Rocker arms. So it can actually drips down the rocker tubes, and then comes out and drips onto the rocker arms. And actually, if you guys look at the back of your rocker arms that you have. There we go. I have to hold it up to the microphone so we can see it. There's a hole right here. And that hole is where it drips down into that little hole and then lubricates inside of here. Pretty cheesy, right? Here's a Continental one, but it's got a hole right there. And so this is force-fed from the hydraulic tappets, comes up the push rod itself, not the tube, the shroud, into here. It's force-fed that goes around here, and there's a little hole right there on the foot where it actually comes out and, let's see, it's sitting this way, and lubricates up in here. So it comes right through. And it's got these little buttons on the end. You know what the little buttons are for?
people to ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah, teachers to ask dumb questions. Whenever you see a button, you can't drill corners, around corners. So it's drilled through that way. So this is drilled up that way, and this is drilled all the way through. So those are, then they plug them up. All right, we got those. Then within the engines, we have different types of oil systems. We have basically the wet sump and the dry sump. And I think the difficulty in your Q&A questions this week are going to be centered around remembering which system does what and where things are located. They ask some very difficult questions that it's like, wow, why would you ask that? So I'm going to see if I can make it easy. So wet sump. What kind of engine do you guys have? Wet sump. Okay. Wet sump, it's the most typical. Hey, good news. Most typical. That was my most typical. Has an oil sump on the bottom. It means that the oil pump sucks oil from the sump that's attached to the engine, goes through the oil pump, goes through the engine. When it's sprayed, splashed, dripped, whatever, it finds its way and just falls right back into the sump. So it's a very, I was going to say closed loop system, but they're all closed loop system. But it's all sort of self-contained right there on the engine. The oil pump, let me see, oil pump sucks oil from the sump, which is attached to the engine, delivered to the engine, and oil is drained back into the sump. And let's look at a couple of them. What do we have here? Bypass valve. Recognize this? All right. Probably not the easiest diagram to follow, but this is your Lycoming oil sump, or sorry, your Lycoming oil system with a wet sump. So here you have your suction screen. Remember I said you got to change out your suction screen or check your suction screen. So it goes right from the oil sump. First thing it's going to hit is the oil pump. Okay, from the oil pump, you're going to come to a decision point. Now, on the older Lycomings, like you have, you guys have a screen on the back of your engine. There's a housing and a screen. I don't think I brought one in. Housing and a screen. And here's the screen. So there's your screen. So somebody asked, okay, what if your engine just came with a screen? Can you change it? Yes, Lycoming makes an adapter. There's a service instruction which just allows you to bolt on this adapter on the back. You take off the screen housing, bolt on this other housing, boom, you can spin a filter right on it. And that housing also has a place for a vernitherm valve. We'll talk about the vernitherm valve in a little bit, which is actually an oil temperature sensing unit. And what happens when it is hot, it expands and it plugs off a passage, and when it's cold, it shrinks down. So you have heat expands, cold shrinks, right? That makes sense because that's how everything works. And so if it was a cold engine, it would be shrunk down and it would open up this passage right here to go either here or this way. And which way is it going to want to go?
The easiest way.
The easiest way to go. So really very little oil is going to go through the oil cooler. It's going to go right through the oil bypass valve. And next thing you get in right through the pressure screen or the spin-on filter. This indicates that you have some extra passages drilled in here, the vacuum pump drive, or through here, the oil relief valve. Okay, then we go to the right back side of the case where you guys are torquing or tightening your spring and your ball. Okay, so that's your oil pressure relief. You do not want an oil pump that will only put out what the engine can use. You want the oil pump to exceed what the engine needs. So under all circumstances, all normal operating circumstances, you hope that little ball, that 1028 Bravo ball, is off its seat and draining oil right back down into the sump. So it falls into the bottom of the case, it goes down and right back into the sump. All right, so you're bypassing what you don't need. If you run up the engine and you as the mechanic determine that hey, this engine just doesn't have enough oil pressure, what do?
Just the valve.
Adjust the valve. How can you adjust your valve?
With the spring.
Take it off, put a different spring on there with the hard.
Okay, take it off, put another spring on. Anybody else notice another way you can do it? Washers. 1/4-inch washers. You're allowed to stack them up on the back side of that. And that makes the spring, gives it less room, so you have more pressure. So all right, so it comes out of here. Going to go through the oil galleries. Now this is not like your engine. It has a right and a left gallery. So crankcase, that gallery is the one where you took the plugs out that goes from the front to the rear. So it's going to come right up the gallery and go into the main bearings, main bearing, more main bearing, and here's the camshaft bearing. Of course, over here it's going to represent all the crank pins. So it goes into the crankshaft, and it goes through lubricates that bearing. Then it goes through that little tube I talked about, lubricates the connecting rods, and then it splashes out. What you have that's unique about this, did you notice it's the trough system, trough technology. So rather than having actual pressure-fed tappets, you actually have this little trough built in. So the splash oil goes into the little trough and fills up and then drips onto the tappet bodies, which drips down the push rods and then drips down the push rod sockets to the rocker arms, bearings, and everything else. And then through gravity, and it goes right back around down to here and into the oil sump. So very simple system. Talk a little more about that. What do we have here? Don't want to talk about that one. All right, then the Continental, which we just looked at a bit ago, same thing. Sucked up through the pump, around the outside of the gears, not through the middle, through the oil screen, to a decision point right there. What's that called? It's an oil temperature control valve, in case you get lost. And there should be another passage that's going to allow it to, well, that was weird. Another passage that's going to allow it to bypass the oil cooler. So bypass the oil cooler or not. Lubricate, see, this has an oil gallery going through here. So what's fed right into here? Tappets, excellent. All right, and here we go. Here's the oil gallery coming up here to the what? Main bearings. Main bearing, and then it's not showing it, but we know that it's going to go from the main bearings out to the throws and lubricate the throws, splash out. When we get into next semester talking about propellers, this is kind of interesting. I like this one. Notice at the end of this gallery, you have oil is going to come out of here, go to a governor, which is actually just an oil pump, smart oil pump that is boosted up to 200 and some odd psi actually, and run back in through here and goes into the main bearing, which has a hole in the crankshaft that's lined up to go up here and drain out here. So you have the super high pressure right here, right next to areas that have normally low pressure. And it's funny how it just kind of doesn't quite cross through. So there we go. You guys are just really excited.
Is
All
that
right.
the piece that gets struck, and that's gonna be recycled?
What's that?
Is that part when it gets struck at the front of the propeller? That it have to be cycled?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so going back to right here, he's asking about what if you get stuff trapped up? You get a lot of sludge built up here. Oh, but you're talking about cycling your prop. So yeah, the reason why you cycling a prop is when you're getting ready to take off, you're doing your run-up inspection, you're going to take your prop control and you're going to pull back on it. It's going to take the prop and it's going to put it into high pitch. And it kind of sounds like something just got thrown into the prop. And and everything just sounds horrible. And what it's doing is it's moving the prop, it's moving oil in and out. Depending on if it's a twin or a single is dictating whether or not you're pushing oil in or draining oil back out.
It uses the same engine oil?
Yes, absolutely same engine oil.
So is it running the same if you have an electric prop?
Totally different oil. If it's electric, then it's electric prop.
Because it's not running oil at all?
Right.
No lubricate or anything?
Right.
Are we going to talk about the governor at some point a little more?
Next 8-week class. You take apart governors and we get into governors. So, yeah. All right. So wet sump. And on the other side of that is the dry sump. Before I move off into dry sump, maybe we should talk about a few things here. All right, so if I had some questions for you about what's pretty much the first thing that oil sees after, once it's picked up? It comes from the sump, and what's the very first thing?
Oil pump.
Oil pump, okay. From the oil pump, it goes to what? Okay, it goes to a screen or filter. All right. From the screen or filter, the very next thing is?
Relief.
We should talk about, it kind of depends. If we go to Lycoming, oil pump, right out of the oil pump, it's going to go to the oil cooler. And why would you do that? Why not go to the relief valve next? Well, if you think about it logically, it's like, would you want it to go to the relief valve and dump some of the hot oil back in to the sump and only cool what's going through? Or would you want to cool everything and then dump whatever you don't need back in? All right, so you want to dump everything back in. What is not on here is, I don't see the oil temp on here. So we'll have to make sure I get that right. So oil temp.
Isn't that the oil cooler bypass valve?
Yeah, but I'm looking to see if they showed it, and they don't. Where the oil temperature sensing bulb is. It actually tells the pilot, hey, what's my oil temp?
It's a Q&A question.
I know, and what is the answer to that Q&A question?
It's in between the engine and the oil cooler.
It is pre-cooled oil. So you're always kind of looking at a worst, so I don't want to say worst case scenario, because it gets hotter as it goes through the engine, but you're looking at your oil pretty much after it's left the oil pump. In this engine, it is right here is where the oil temp is. So let's see, it's suction screen, comes right up, goes through the oil pump, out, screen. It's actually screened at the same time that the oil temp's taken and then moved on. So it's right at the screen.
So it's before the cool.
Yes. So I want to say, I think an easy way to do this is, and that'll be back in here on this one too, so right about there, is the oil temp is never taken after the oil cooler. All right, should we take a break?
I have 13 shopping chocolates in my house. Pretty good.